Good morning, everybody. This is Maddie from Food Power. Thanks for joining our webinar today. Just as the first thing we're going to do is just make sure everyone can hear me okay. So if you can hear me on the left-hand side of your screen in the attendee chat, can you just type in where you're listening from, and we'll see who's joining us this morning, and we'll also make sure that my mic is working. Great. Hello, Claire. I'm guessing Claire's in Plymouth. Rosie in York, Gareth is in Sheffield, Ben's in Blackburn with Darwin, London, Bristol, Aberdeen, fantastic, Middlesbrough, super, okay. We've got a great mix of people from all over the country. And Ben can hear fine, but we don't know where he's listening from. So I'm just gonna introduce a little bit about the webinar before I pass it over to our main presenters. If you are having any connection issues, we recommend using Chrome as a browser, but otherwise it sounds like people are doing fine. So on your screen, what you should see on the left-hand side is the chat bar. And if you have any questions over the course of the webinar, if you want to ask your questions in that chat, then everyone can see your question, which is ideal, unless you have a private question for the presenters, in which case, you can send me a question using an icon up at the top, which says ask the presenter a question. So if you have a private question, send it there. But if you want everyone to see it, please keep it in the box on the left-hand side. I'll also repeat all of the questions out loud because the webinar is recorded so that you can listen to it again later. Often the attendee chats are a great place to share contact information or information about your project or links that people are asking about. So it's a really good opportunity to connect with other people from around the country who are listening in. You might be working on similar things, or a good way to share information. It's one of the main ethos of our Food Power project is that. So we really like the webinars, not only for us to share information with you and the people who are speaking, but also as a chance for you who are just listening in to discuss with each other. So, as I mentioned, the webinar is recorded. It'll include the sound and the slides, and I'll post a link to this on our Food Power website in the next few days. And I'll also email all of the attendees with this link so that you can review it if you'd like to, or share it with anyone else you think might enjoy it. A bit about Food Power. We're a UK-wide program delivered in partnership by Sustain, the Alliance for Better Food and Farming, and Church Action on Poverty. And we're funded by the Big Lottery Fund. And the aim of Food Power is to strengthen communities' ability to reduce food poverty by tackling its root causes at the local level. So we work with about 50 local partnerships, and we call them alliances. They take different forms and sometimes have different names. So for this, we'll call them alliances that are based in areas around the UK. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been working to create a peer learning network to develop and share solutions among the alliances. So we have regional learning networks. We have 8 peer mentors that we work with. We also offer financial support for key activities, different resources on the website, advice from our team, and we do the webinars. There's more information on the website, so I encourage you to check it out if you're new to Food Power and see how you might be able to get involved, or see if there's a group in your local area who's already a member. So today's webinar is focused on engaging experts by experience. I'm doing the welcome and introductions, Maddie, where I'm going to pass it over to Ben Pearson, my colleague who is in Blackburn with Darwin, who's going to then be speaking with Corey and Tia and Kath and Penny, who are located. Corey and Tia are with him in Blackburn, but Darren and Kath and Penny are in Newcastle. And then we're also going to hear from Jill, Jamie, and Vicky. So we've got a whole crew of speakers today based in 3 different locations. I'd say it's our most one of our most action-packed webinars. So it'll be great to hear all of the different experiences people are going to be sharing. We find it's best that most questions are answered kind of in a clump during the Q&A at the end of the webinar once we've heard from all the speakers. So if you have a question as we're going, feel free to type it into the box. If I can respond easily, like if it's about financial support or something like that, I can, or if it's like, where can I find this? I'll just send the link. But then if it's a question for any of the presenters, I'll make a note of it and then make sure that they get to that at the end of the webinar. There's a few hyperlinks in the slides, and if you click on them, I'm pretty sure what we've learned is that they don't work through the any meeting format. So I'll post any links that I see into the chat box and then also circulate them afterwards in the email I send around to all attendees. So that is it for me. I'm going to now pass over to Ben up in Blackburn or Darwin.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. So the purpose of today's webinar, as most of you are probably aware, we've now opened the new round of financial support for people to involve people with lived experience of poverty within their alliances. So we've been working with 4 alliances over the previous year to deliver pilot projects. So I'm joined here in Blackburn with Darwin today with Jill from Blackburn with Darwin Food Alliance, and up in Newcastle by Jamie and some of the experts up there. So what I wanted to do was just give a brief introduction on why it's important to involve people with lived experience of food poverty in your alliance, and then explore what some of those local alliances have been doing. So the main purpose of involving people with lived experience is there's a lack of people, a lack of voice for people experiencing food poverty within the hunger sector and more widely within society. So as you'll hear from some of the experience of the experts today, how they've been able to be involved over the previous year to feel empowered and have their voices heard has been really important. Different pilot projects have used different methodologies in which they've done that, and different experts have been involved in a variety of different ways. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll get an idea of some of the different ways in which people have been involved and felt empowered, and how they're continuing to be empowered as well. So like I said, and like Maddie said, do ask questions along the way as well. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is some key things to consider when involving people with lived experience. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was relationships and developing those relationships, building that trust and gaining confidence. So I think when working with people with lived experience of food poverty, it's really a good place to start is to assume that mistrust and look at ways in which some of those barriers can be broken down. It's lots of people with lived experience will have barriers in being able to engage with people in a professional capacity. So it can take time, and I think you will hear from the pilot projects we're currently working with on how long it took to build some of those relationships. We're talking sometimes 3, 4, 5 months to get people with lived experience to the stage where they feel comfortable to be able to share their experiences. And different experts by experience will want to share things at a different level as well. So some more locally, and some of the experts you'll hear from today have been involved at a national level, and you'll hear more about that from the experts in just a little while. The group formation is really important as well. So creating a space to form bonds, looking at common stories and experiences of those people with lived experience. So with the groups I've been working with, there's that sort of peer support that is created where people form bonds, and as those bonds and those relationships build up, people then feel more confident to tell the stories. That also works really well, and I'm sure our colleagues up in Newcastle will talk a little bit about this later, about how it can also help with recruitment onto projects, where if you've got people who are quite confident telling their stories and well known in their community and involved in local projects, they can then go out to recruit further people to be involved as experts. Something else that's really important is allowing experts to create their own space, so not expecting experts by experience, those with lived experience of food poverty, to straight away feel comfortable in being invited into an environment. So it should be about exploring with those with lived experience what sort of space that they want to work in, creating their own rules really, and looking at the language and terminology in which they engage with that works best for them. I think one of the important things to remember is it isn't about making somebody with lived experience behave like a professional. It's making professionals meet them part way and looking at how that power balance works, that everybody is able to share something and move forwards to influence strategy and decisions on a local and a national basis. I think the issues need to be their own as well. So it's about people setting their own agenda. It's not about alliances or organisations saying this is what you need to do, this is what we want you to explore, but it's about having open conversations with people with lived experience about what's important for them. So what's important for the young people I'm with in Blackburn with Darwin today might be very different to what's important to Kath and Penny, who are up in Newcastle. So it's really listening to those people's personal experiences and exploring ways in which they feel empowered to get involved. Yeah, I've already said it's not about changing the behaviour of those with lived experience. It's about working with them to look at how they can get involved. I think something to consider as well, it's a constant negotiation with experts. So not all experts will want to be empowered to a level where they have total control. Some people, as paid professionals do, will have different roles within the project or the involvement of those people with lived experience. So I think it's having the right person to take a lead within an alliance or a partner within an alliance who has a good relationship with those people with lived experience to have that negotiation ongoing, really, to understand where experts want to be on that journey. I think as well, one last key consideration to end on before I move on is being really realistic about expectations. Just earlier this morning, I've been chatting to Jill here whilst we were waiting for the webinar to start about evidencing the change, and it's being really realistic that our experts may be really passionate about a specific subject, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what they are saying is going to immediately change. So it is being realistic, but it's also recognising some things that people may not realise have created change are sometimes a result of experts by experience, but it might not always be that clear. So it's having that constant kind of conversation as well with experts about how their input has had some involvement in creating change in local alliances and in national projects as well. So moving on, and many of those things that I've just talked about, it is a brief summary and we'll probably discuss them more towards the end, and I think lots of them will be touched upon when the others speak in just a little while. But just a recap of the financial support that's available. So this opened yesterday, so any alliance registered with Food Power can apply for up to £5,000 for a 12-month project. The deadline for those applications is the 1st of March. Obviously, there's the webinar today, which should help those people who are planning to apply by hearing about the successes and challenges of the pilots that we've been working on. There is also some free training in Birmingham on the 15th of February, a full day in which we'll be talking in more detail, building upon what we shared today about how people with lived experience can become empowered, and that's being delivered by myself and my colleague Joyce Kay from Church Action on Poverty. One last thing to say on the financial support, there is also some financial support available from the National Lottery around leaders with lived experience. That's a pilot project where this isn't Food Power specific, but people, organisations can apply for £20,000 to £50,000 lottery grants. The application for that is the 25th of February, the application deadline. I have only found out about that this morning, but if anybody is interested, either myself or Maddie will be able to forward details to anybody who wants to find out more about that. Something that we always encourage with the financial support from Food Power is that people or alliances try to get match or in-kind support to go alongside the financial support that we'd be awarding. So I'm now going to move on to speaking to first Corey and Tia in Blackburn with Darwen, and then we'll then to speaking to Kath and Penny up in Newcastle. I don't know how many of you who've joined the webinar have seen the Food Power, the short film that was made in Blackburn with Darwen, which both Corey and Tia both featured in. Some of you may have seen that, but I'm just going to ask them both a few questions now. And yeah, I hope you find this useful. So Corey, welcome.
Hi.
Tia, welcome. Corey, do you want to tell people a little bit about how you first got involved in the work in Blackburn with Darwen?
Yeah, sure. So basically, on the 1st of December in 2017, there was a big sleep out for Night Safe that did the organisation to raise awareness for homelessness. And I think that was like one of the first times I met Ben, and because me and Tia are very close, known each other since we were babies, so she sort of invited me to come along. So I did a sleep out, and I thought it really interesting to meet a lot of new people, help raise awareness for a big cause. So I wanted to get involved with Food Power because I found out that that was like linked with homelessness, like not being able to eat, not being able to afford to eat, and so I got involved. And ever since, it's been really useful, and I found out that I was in food poverty back then, not knowing actually what it was. So I thought if I was actually involved in it, I could share my own experience and people might actually listen, because we are experts by experience. And that's one of the main reasons why I started.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about the activity you've been involved in so far?
Which one?
You don't just, you can focus on one, you don't need to cover everything. There's quite a lot, and Jill will touch on it later as well, but perhaps about what you're going to this week in London.
So on this Thursday, I'm going to London for the campaign meeting. Is it the campaign meeting for the Children's Future, the food inquiry? So basically, we're going to be just talking about what we're going to be doing next and what we've all been thinking about to do. We've recently done a campaign called Darwen Gets Hangry in Darwen Town, and that went really well. We talked to the children and we did face paints, we did little plastic plates, what they thought it was about, and we basically just spreaded the word about what's actually going on in Darwen and with Blackburn and even other places around the UK of what's actually going on with Food Power, because no one actually knew what food poverty was until that day, so we just helped them know what it was.
Thanks, Corey. And Tia, do you want to, obviously you got involved around the same time as Corey, you were also involved in the sleep out. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you felt empowered to talk about your experiences? What's given you that confidence over the last year of being involved?
Well, my confidence boosted up when we worked with Health when we first started working with you. And I think the biggest thing was when the fixers came and they pointed at me and Corey individually to be ambassadors for them, because it actually made me feel like me and Corey stood out and we're actually making a change. Being invited to Cardiff, London, and actually being able to do our own campaign, Darwen Gets Hungry, made it feel like important, like people were actually starting to listen to us and understand what we're doing.
And do either of you think there's been any challenges along the way? What's been the most difficult part of either being involved or sharing your own stories?
Well, school, they're like more concerned about school time instead of letting us like join in. And sometimes, even though your parents are going through it, they don't really understand, and they're pretty embarrassed that you're like speaking about things you've gone through to other people, because adults like keep it to themselves and they think that they don't need support, but children need support.
I think they're embarrassed for us to talk about what we went through because we're in their school. And they must think that we make it look bad, but if anything, we're making them look better. But I think they're just scared for like us to let other people know that what the school food is actually like and how much it actually is. And I think they're just embarrassed, but I'm not bothered. If it's making me look better, I'm not bothered about what the school looks like. As long as I get my GCSEs done and make myself look good, I'm not bothered.
Great. And just lastly, the two of you. So obviously now there's many people who have joined us this morning who may want to involve people like yourselves, other young people or adults in other areas of the country. What would your message be to those people in how important it is to involve people with lived experience? What would you say to other alliances around the country who might be thinking about doing this?
I think if other places, like, say we've got our own, like, experts by experience, we are your experts by experience. If other places like Luton or Newcastle have their own children experts by experience, children get listened to more because they're so fragile and they actually know and truthful. And so I think it would help if you did campaigns for the children to know what they were doing and to have their own speeches and make themselves look a bit more professional. It actually does help a lot.
And it makes the alliance look good because they're not only just focused on adults, they're actually giving children a chance to get their voices across and everything they've been through, because everything an adult goes through, the child goes through.
Corey, Tia, thank you for that. I'm now going to bring in Kath and Penny up in Newcastle. Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello.
Are you both well?
Yeah.
Good. So, again, thank you for joining us this morning. I just wanted to ask you some similar questions, really. So, starting with you, Kath, how did you first get involved in Newcastle then?
I got involved through Baggy Community Trust. Emma asked me to go to the End Hungry UK conference, and then I had a few meetings. Well, I've been all over really, and yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was worth that it needed to be shouted about. I know lots of people that are in food poverty. I've experienced it myself, and it's about wanting to make a difference, maybe, and help your community or people you know, or even UK wide. If we can find a solution and we can help and understand more, then we can move on to doing some actions as well as just doing meetings. Although doing meetings is great and you're talking to people and you get listened to, but I think there has to come a point where we need to be moving on and doing a bit of action rather than just talking all the time and looking at paperwork and reading emails. So from my point of view, I'm happy for it to move on to the next stage, and I'm still as passionate as ever. But it's about managing demand as well, and especially because Penny and Heather, Penny's looking for work, Heather's trying to manage being involved with this, and she's trying to manage her work around that. So we need to look at what experts by experience are available and manage it between us, so that it doesn't matter if we all don't go to the same thing, as long as we're fetching the message back to our alliance, I think. And so we're spreading the workload so we'll be in effect, the alliance becomes more responsible and more, I feel we were running it more effectively. So you don't need 4 people to go to the same event. You maybe just need 2. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think it links into what I was saying earlier about different people within the expert program having different roles within that. Penny, just bringing you in, do you just want to talk a little bit about your involvement has been and what you're planning to do going forward? I know you've attended some meetings in Newcastle and had quite a role within those. Do you want to touch upon those, please?
Well, I mean, I got involved with it through the same thing with Biker Community Trust. Because I work in the food industry and I used to work for a local church cafe running that and managing that, where I got into the holiday hunger and, using up waste food. But it's like taking it forward. We have stuff for financial inclusion group, which Newcastle Council are keen for us to be involved in, to help them. We are engaging with Feeding Britain. We have 2 MPs coming up on Thursday to show them around Biker and to sort of champion the work we do and, how we engage with the community, how we help people out.
Great. I know you've been, all 3 of you have been quite proactive in taking that lead on what you think the agenda should be. Do you just want to say a little bit more about that? I know you've done some, just for 1 more minute, speak a little bit about the social media and the recruitment of further experts.
We have set up our own our own Facebook group, which is Food Power. So we have that, and it enables all the agencies that we're actually engaging with in Newcastle area to drop things in, what's going on, what's not going on, what's working, if they need any help, what help we can give them, where we can source stuff for them. And going in with the council, to help them out, how to sort of try and engage with people to get to the bottom line of why they have to go and ask for a food bank parcel. Taking the stigma off it to mean that it can be more socially acceptable to talk about it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that. I'm going to bring you both back in just a little later for questions. I'm sure those people joining us have lots of questions for the experts. But I'm just going to move on now and hand over to Jill, who's going to talk a little bit about the work in Blackburn with Darwin.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to rattle through this because we are running out of time a little bit, and I want to make sure that you get a chance to ask questions. So you've heard from Corey and Tia about how they got engaged. I think I would say that the Blackburn with Darwin Food Alliance and the Experts Programme gave them a platform to flourish. We used them initially with the Darwin Group, and on the back of that, which was about crisis food in Darwin, decided to launch the Darwin Gets Hungry campaign. So it's been about involving the young people, developing conversations. Those conversations have then spread to other youth groups and other schools, to the point now where I think that we've got not just the name a Youth Empowerment Forum, we've actually got an embryonic movement, a movement which will continue and bring in other people as it develops. So you've got all the slides there. I think the biggest success has been to create this movement, to give the young people a platform, to raise the profile of food poverty, linking it very much to child poverty, because whilst people might not altogether, generalisations here, accept that food poverty is anything other than their own fault. Child poverty is something that speaks to everybody. And giving those young people the voice, helping them to speak truth to power, it's been fantastic to see these young people blossom, to be able to go to national conferences, to be able to go on local radio and to make their points. So our biggest success, I think, so far has been that Blackburn with Darwen Borough Council now is reviewing all its policies, and we'll see how they impact on child poverty and food poverty. And that's not going to be a quick fix. We all know about the difficulties that local authorities are facing funding-wise, but there might be processes, procedures, cultures that might be changed in due course. So the three, I guess then the biggest challenge that we still face is it actually making a difference? Are our young people better able to access food? I don't know. I think my jury is still out on that. And I think we need to do more work on, now that we've given people a voice, now that we've given them the platform, both locally and nationally, what effect is it having? So that's work to be done, I think. The three lessons, again, you've got these articulated on the slides. I think it's about relationships. We have to have good relationships to give people the confidence to speak out. And we have to manage how we encourage our young experts. I think it's quite easy to wheel them out, but we need to make sure that that platform is robust and that they're well supported. About communication, we need to make sure that people do have a voice, but also that that voice is amplified, that others can echo what it is they're saying and interpret it for different audiences. And we have to keep the volume up. And that's another challenge, really. We've had the Darwen Gets Hangry campaign. That's been taken up by some Blackburn young people. So we've got a Blackburn Gets Hangry. It would be lovely to see that taken further across Lancashire, if not the UK. And then it's about spreading the load. I think to have a small group of experts is wonderful, but their lives are busy, GCSEs, etc., etc. So we need to keep developing the movement and have others begin to stand up. And I think our young people's social movement will do just that. I've rattled through that in the interests of time, but I'm more than happy to take questions and or answer anything offline.
Thank you very much for that, Jill. As you can see, there's is some more information and some links to the short film there as well. I'm going to move on and introduce Jamie and Vicky up in Newcastle, who are going to give an overview of what they've been up to, and then we'll move on to questions after that. Jamie, can you hear me?
We can. We are here, ready to roll.
Thank you. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, so just a little bit about Food Newcastle ourselves. Sorry, it's Vicky speaking here. We are we've developed these 6 themes, 6 key issues based on the Sustainable Food Cities 6 key themes. And obviously, as you know, one of the key issues that we're looking at is the food poverty. So our food poverty group was established in April 2017. So we're still in the very early stages of it. But 2 of our key areas that we've been working on is the holiday hunger, which is going really great. But of course, as you know, the food power is the area that we're going to talk about mainly today. So our food power programme, we decided to work with the Bike Award as it's home to about 9,500 people. And we know that there is a fair amount of issues within the Bike Award with regards to food poverty and poverty issues. The idea initially was to give people a voice and try and explore the issues and develop potential solutions through conversation. As you've heard from two of our most active experts, Penny and Kath, we are sort of moving really quickly forward with it. Although the sort of issues initially were basically getting the recruitment sorted to try and sort of organise a number of experts to be able to get their voices heard. We started the recruitment in July 2018, and it wasn't until we did some signal surveys in in September, which were basically a survey that sort of asked a number of questions with regards to sort of issues that people may be having from, as simple as, are they having food problems, or, are they having struggles paying bills? And through there, this is how we met Penny, Kath, Heather, Ray, some of our key experts, and Dave as well. And this is where we are today. The girls, Penny and Kath and Heather, have been to Manchester for the Food Power Experts by Experience pilot projects. They've been to End Hunger UK. They've participated in a debate in the House of Lords for the insecurity measurement in October. We've had a couple of truth conversations now, which has led to, as the girls mentioned, developing the Facebook page, which is again trying to sort of be a bit more active and trying to include a lot more people within Biker. And latest news is that we've got the MPs from Feeding Britain had contacted Heather and Penny and Kath to organise a meeting in this month. Well, it's actually happening on Thursday, to try and sort of hear and understand what we're doing in Newcastle with regards to food poverty. So it's moving. It's with a slow start. It's moving extremely quickly now, which is really, really exciting. And all the girls and Ray and Dave, of course, are really excited about this. But like everyone says, it's more about the actions now. So going on to sort of what our greatest success is, I can't fault it. We've got the most fantastic experts. We would like to obviously develop it and sort of maybe meet a few more people to sort of join on the team. So that's again work in progress. But they have been our greatest success, and are moving forward will be the greatest success. The hardest bit was the recruitment. Like I mentioned before, it took us, we sort of stood on the street trying to recruit people, but it's how to engage with people and in using the right terminology. So thanks to the signal surveys, we were actually able to sort of break that barrier and start speaking to people and sort of getting an understanding of what language and terminology needs to be used. So Food Newcastle's experience, I'm sort of flying through these again. If you have any questions at the end, please do holler, but I'm aware that we've got limited time. So like I say, the toughest bit was the recruitment, mainly because people may not think that they're experiencing food poverty, and ones that perhaps don't always want to admit it, which again I think has been mentioned in Blackburn and Darwen. Blackburn, sorry, and Darwen. It's also finding the right recruitment strategy, and sort of taking our time with it just to make sure that we get the right people on board and sort of get a really good understanding of the people that are wanting to be on board. Again, talking about terminology, we found it's best to work with organisations that have already got relationships with people experiencing food poverty, because again, that breaks down the barriers. We also need to sort of mention to give it time to develop relationships with people. We've got to allow the group time to grow organically, and for the experts to lead on the conversation. This is not our responsibility; it's the experts. So it's important not to set the agenda when doing the truth conversations. And also you can find that it quite often can take off in different directions, mainly political in our experiences. So we have to also be very careful sort of not to go too much down that route. And the other thing to mention as well is that it's not just about food poverty. Food poverty sometimes is seen as a minor issue in comparison to general poverty. So it's also to be extremely aware of that. Shared learnings. So again, I'm going to mention it again, terminology and language. This is one of the key things. We've just got to be really, really careful into how people would like to be spoken to, how they want to be heard, and what their title can be. Sometimes it's like, do you want to be called experts by experience? Is there another way we can sort of, give you a title? So it's really just, again, it's just getting the conversation going and making sure that you understand each other. The other thing that was an issue, well, it's not an issue, but it's something that we were very aware of. It's how you thank the experts for all their help, because they're pulled left, right and centre to do all of these events, going down to House of Lords, all of those sort of things. And it's just, how can we thank them for the work that they're putting in, because people are having to, particularly Heather's having to take holiday from work to be able to come to attend these things. So it's identifying those issues. And finally, it's just, again, it's careful leadership. So going back to this, sort of when we've had discussions and it's gone a little bit political, we've had to be extremely careful, not to make it too political. And that's pretty much it from us. I hope I haven't gone over the time too much.
Thank you, Vicky, for that. That was great.
Okay, I'm going to jump back in. Maddie here again in London. We've now got about 15 minutes left for questions. I haven't seen any come through in the chat box, but if you have any, now's the time to let us know if it's about financial support from Food Power, or if you have any questions for any of the speakers. Claire has asked, are there any specific tips for recruitment, please? Recruiting experts. And maybe on that, Rosie's asked an interesting one. Tia or other, what was one of the first things you remember Ben saying to you that meant something to you? That's a really interesting question. Okay, so it sounds like there's just like a general question about recruitment, and specifically like what's the opening line, I think is maybe what Rosie's getting to. Tia, or
touch on recruitment and then hand over to Tia.
Sorry? Yeah.
Need to touch on. So in regards to recruitment, I don't think there's one set way to recruit people. So different alliances have used different methods. Here in Blackburn with Darwin, I did already have some links with the schools. So I think where those partnerships were already in place, similar to the pilot down in Luton, they were already working with a group of people who became the experts. In Newcastle, obviously, it was slightly different, that they used the service as the initial recruitment method, but then some of the recruitment now has happened through Kath and Penny and the others because they have those relationships within their communities. So it is something that I'm currently working on, and we do have some kind of recruitment guidelines around sort of the language and terminology that can be used. But I think a lot of it is exploiting opportunities and partnerships that are already there, and working with partners who have the capacity to have that ongoing relationship with experts.
And before we hear from the folks in Blackburn, I'm going to pass it over to Newcastle real quick to just see, because I know some people there have to leave a bit earlier. Is there anything from the Newcastle team that you guys want to say about, from your Heather, is there anything that really stood out to you about that initial moment of recruitment?
It's the terminology, yes. You have to be careful how you word these things, or people can take highly offensive ways to it. And it's because I've worked in this area for the last 3 years, I've got to know a lot of people. and you've got to engage with them carefully, and it takes a lot to build up their confidence for them to actually speak to you.
Yeah. Is there anything that you remember from some of the first times that people reached out to you that really struck a chord, both negative or positive?
Not off the top of my head at the minute.
Okay. I was just curious if there's kind of like key words that some people find better or worse to use. Do you?
Poverty is a word. Poverty is a word that people don't like using.
Yeah. Back over to Blackburn with Darwin. Do you guys want to jump in on this question about things that you found particularly effective or not effective?
Yeah, Tia, do you want to speak?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've been working with Ben for 3 years now, so I can't really remember like conversations that we had. But like if someone was like not paying attention or something was wrong, he wouldn't be like a teacher and like tell them off. Instead of like he'd pause what you were doing, then speak to you, and then make sure you were okay, and then carry on. So he weren't like strict and like a teacher, just easy going.
Yeah. Well, looking at some of the new groups, I think that when they're looking at food poverty, they're quite amazed by the statistics. 47% of children in Blackburn with Darwin living in poverty, and what that actually means. So it's really about just communicating, this is what it's like in Blackburn with Darwin, and then drawing out of them what their experience is. And going on to Graham's question, is it Graham or Robbie? Robbie. Just, again, it's what that hook is. And my view would be to work with a smaller group rather than a larger group initially, and then start bringing them together. But it depends on how you're going to pitch in. With school groups, you've got or young people's groups, you've got a larger, say up to 10, a dozen people, but from that will emerge experts.
And I think just to add to that as well, I've now with some of the other pilots, I've actually been saying a group of 5 people is a good number, less is more. Here, there's originally the group in Blackburn with Darwin was about 10 people, and now there's kind of a core group of about 5. I think it's creating that distinction between consultation and empowering experts. And sometimes if you have too big a group, it can become more like a consultation. Coming back to one of my points earlier, though, is it's really important for that constant negotiation, and that actually being aware that experts will leave and others will come into the mix. But I think generally a group of 3 to 5 is a good number to be working with to ensure that you have time to build up those relationships with them and they feel that they have a meaningful role within the organisation or alliance.
Yeah, just to say out loud for anyone listening to the recording, Graham was asking, do you have any tips for pulling together a group of experts, or is it better in smaller groups, i.e. 1 or 2 people? So that's a really good point to bring up. Kind of, it sounds like most people are saying, yeah, like Ben's saying, kind of smaller can be stronger, but keeping in mind that, people have lives to live and other commitments, so they might be able to be a part of it more or less at different times. He's also asked, you mentioned importance of not setting a rigid agenda. How do you balance this when thinking about the outcomes required for the group? So that's a question. Yeah, so how do we balance kind of outcomes potentially maybe for funding or things like that with what the agenda that comes up more from the grassroots? And then Ben's interested in hearing more about the truth conversations that were mentioned and how these work. Maybe we can start with, I'll start with Ben's question about the truth conversations, and we'll come back to Graham's second question. Was it, someone want to jump in about the truth conversations?
Vicky, do you want to talk about those?
Hi. So, the truth conversations we started with, there was 4 of us, wasn't there, initially? And basically how we formulated it was we just asked some general questions, and then we got everyone to sort of either write on post-it notes or shout out points of what it came down to language and terminology. It came down to, I'm trying to remember because it feels like so long ago now. We were having discussions about what might be causes, what sort of areas are most hit, why we think it's most hit, what people are doing about it. So it was just basically getting a sort of general consensus together about sort of the key issues surrounding food poverty. And like I mentioned before, it did sort of slightly diverse into sort of a political angle with relating to universal credit. And things like that. But it's sort of what was really, really nice about this particular discussion is it was new to us meeting Penny, Kath, Ray, Dave, and Heather. But what it was really nice about it is it sort of allowed each of them to have their voice and be able to sort of speak freely without sort of feeling like they were sort of capped in any way. So yeah, I mean, by all means, ask me any more questions, but that's how it sort of went with, certainly with the first truth conversation.
No, that was really good, Vicky. Just,
Can I just
sorry, Jill.
Jump in there. One of the slides that we didn't particularly dwell on was the leapfrog tools. We had a co-design workshop where we've got some tools now which encourage conversations. So I don't know, Ben, if you can nip back to the mat that we had. But there are tools like that encourage people to share what it is they're feeling about food. And so you can see the dinner plate there. We've got others that look like a kitchen. So what's in your cupboard? What's on your table? Who eats with you, and just to try and gauge what people's experiences are and attitudes to food. And from that, it's a less in-your-face confrontational way of starting a conversation. And the other thing that's happening across Lancashire are the Poverty Truth Commission sort of formats, and there's probably data about that we might be able to share.
Thanks for that, Jill. And just coming back to the earlier question from Graham about the not setting a rigid agenda and how that meets the outcomes. Others might want to add to this, but I think in Blackburn with Darwin, for example, the level of child poverty was particularly high. So that was what the Alliance and Jill and the local authority decided to focus on here. So you can still have an overarching theme, but then it's once you have that overarching theme, not being too rigid with it. So when working with people with lived experience, sometimes there will be things that people say that people don't necessarily like. So it's alliances and organisations being open to hearing some of that criticism. And if a person with lived experience wants to talk more at length about a specific subject that they're passionate about, giving them that opportunity. Because when we're talking about empowerment, if as soon as something comes up that people are a bit touchy about or don't want to delve into, you're then disempowering that person by not giving them the opportunity to open up and discuss that subject in more detail.
Thanks. And folks from Newcastle, do you want to add anything in there about Graham's question? If not, I think we'll move over to our last question from Sharon. But do you want to add anything about balancing outcomes with what comes up?
Outcomes, I think as we've gone through our journey so far and we've looked at the outcomes, and obviously Penny and Nicola last week have done a bit of paperwork. They had a mega meeting and we've got some little bits of outcomes. But I think they have to be realistic as well, because you've got to realise that experts by experience, as you say, they have their own lives as well. So it's balancing stuff. So although we're all desperate for fantastic outcomes, I think we have to be realistic and think to ourselves, well, even if we get a small outcome in, say, 3 months, we can aim a bit higher as we get further on. And it's about having patience as well, which I have got none of. So there we go.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like patience and keeping in mind the realistic timelines of change at varying levels is a very good point. Maybe the last question we'll do before we just get into kind of like a few wrap-up things is that Sharon's asked, she said, we've discussed how experts by experience help to make change, quote, out there, but do you think it is transformative for the individuals involved on a personal level, e.g. increasing confidence or developing new/other skills? She'd be really interested what the experts by experience who are present think about this. Does anyone want to?
If Corey could start on that, because she just wanted to share something.
Well, basically, ever since my confidence has grown, I've been asked to do other things. Like this year, I'm being elected to be youth MP, so I'm going to have more opportunities with that. And I'm putting food poverty on the agenda. I've got to choose 3 campaigns, so I'm going to do a campaign on food poverty as well. So I think if I do that campaign, people might start noticing more about food poverty. So it might get out there even more just by me sharing an experience, and it might just help people develop an idea of what food poverty is.
Thanks, Corey.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to chime in on that one?
What was the question?
Can we just repeat the question? Sorry, Kath did have something to say.
Yeah, it was just about is getting involved transformative for the individuals, experts by experience, on a more personal level, such as increasing confidence or developing new or other skills. So has it kind of affected, like in terms of there's the change that it could affect in terms of policy or things like that, but at a more personal level, does anyone want to speak to what it's been like?
On a personal level, I've always been quite a confident person anyway, but yeah, it does. It improves your awareness. It improves your confidence, so you can speak more freely about the thing in question, and also you meet new people as well. And to me, it's like people watching. You know, on a personal level, you're getting to know more people. You know, I love watching people and the mannerisms and learning to talk to people in different ways. Rather, some people like to be talked to quietly. Some people like to be talked to in a group. You know, and it's all a learning curve, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks. So I think that is probably where we will wrap up. I just want to first say thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today. I know we had a lot of people coming in, as I said, from a lot of different places. So thanks for everyone for your contributions. We'll, as I mentioned, we'll have this online later today. And I really would recommend having a look at the Food Power website. We have a page that's all dedicated to engaging experts by experience with a number of resources on there, including case studies of what people have done in this locally. We've also got our newsletter that you could sign up to that goes out just at the start of each month and includes information about things like webinars and available financial support. Of course, we're on Twitter, as is Blackburn with Darwin Food Alliance and Food Newcastle. If you have any questions, particularly about the financial support, it's best to get in touch with Ben Pearson, as he can answer anything about it. But as we mentioned at the beginning, it's the deadline is on Friday, the 1st of March, and all of the information about that is on the Food Power website, including guidelines and how to apply. So I'm going to turn off, we'll all end kind of the formal part of the webinar now, but if anyone has any questions that they need, that they'd like to ask in the chat box or anything final to add in there, feel free to type it in. I'll leave that open for a few more minutes. But thank you once again to everyone in Newcastle and everyone in Blackburn.
Yeah, thank you.